There are moments in life that hit like a freight train, sudden, merciless, and forever changing the path you thought you were on. If you asked me whether I'd ever seen a Navy SEAL owe someone so much he'd risk everything just to pay it back, I'd tell you this story. It happened on a day that was never supposed to be anything special. The factory was the kind of place that grinds on, day in and day out, metal walls sweating in the summer heat. The scent of oil and chemicals hanging thick in the air, heavy machinery roaring so loud you could barely hear your own thoughts. Lieutenant Mark Thompson, a Navy SEAL through and through, was leading his team on a routine safety inspection, just walking the line, eyes darting everywhere, heart always a little bit ahead of the next disaster. As if some corner of his mind knew what was coming. No one, not his men, not the workers, not even Mark himself, knew that their lives were about to be ripped apart. The explosion didn't warn anyone. 1 second, Mark was checking the pressure gauges, and the next, the world split open with a blast so violent it shook the soul right out of you, like 1,000 train cars smashing into a brick wall. The floor buckled, fire shot up toward the ceiling, smoke rolled in like a living beast. All those rules and safety protocols went out the window the instant chaos hit. Mark felt himself thrown hard against the concrete. Pain was white hot, but it was the heat that really knocked the wind from his lungs. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe, and somewhere in the mess, he realized a steel beam had landed square across his leg. No matter how hard he tried to twist, to push, to think his way out, he was stuck, smoke burning his eyes. Every breath like swallowing knives. His team was gone, blown away by the blast, shouts echoing somewhere far off. For a man who'd spent years surviving combat, facing the worst of the world, it's funny how helpless you can feel when it's just you, a ton of steel, and a fire that doesn't care who you are. Mark tried to remember his training, stay calm, stay alert, focus on what you can control, but the fire didn't care about discipline. It came closer with every second, licking at the edges of his uniform, the world closing in tighter and tighter, until finally, Mark was almost ready to give in. That's when a new sound cut through the chaos. Not the shriek of sirens, not the desperate shouts of his men, but the steady, determined steps of someone running toward the fire instead of away from it. Samantha Miller, a nurse barely out of her 20s, didn't look like anyone's hero. She was thin, her uniform too big, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, but when she heard that explosion from the field hospital nearby, she didn't hesitate. She grabbed her bag and ran straight into the smoke. She didn't care about her own safety, didn't pause to think about what she was risking. All that mattered was that there were people inside. And maybe, just maybe, one of them still had a shot at living. Samantha ducked under fallen beams, shoved through blinding smoke, her skin burning from the heat, sweat, and soot stinging her eyes. She found Mark collapsed, blood on his lips, pinned and half-conscious. And if she was scared, she never let it show. Her hands shook, but her resolve didn't. She checked his pulse, whispered something only he would ever know, then began dragging him out, inch by inch, even as the factory crumbled and fire howled behind her. Samantha didn't stop. When a piece of ceiling slammed to the ground so close it nearly crushed them both, she just gritted her teeth, threw her body over his, and kept moving. It's a strange thing. What adrenaline and purpose can do. Her arms, her back, her legs, all screamed for her to let go, to save herself, but Samantha ignored it. Mark's life, right then, mattered more than her own. It took forever, though maybe it was only minutes, until they reached the edge of the flames, light streaming in from the open factory door. One last burst of strength, and Samantha got Mark out just as the building collapsed behind them, swallowing up everything in a roar of fire and metal. Outside, the world was reduced to ruins and distant sirens. Mark was barely hanging on, slipping in and out of consciousness as he was rushed to the hospital, Samantha never leaving his side. Days passed in a blur of pain and drugs, nightmares of fire and suffocation, until finally, he woke up for real and saw her sitting beside him, quietly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. No boasting, no drama, just a calm presence in a sterile hospital room. When Mark found the words, he asked her why. Why would she risk it all for a stranger? Samantha just shrugged, gave him the kind of smile that didn't ask for thanks. "That's my job," she said, voice soft but unbreakable. If I don't do it, who will? Simple as that. But Mark couldn't let it go. That moment, when he realized he was alive because she didn't turn away, something shifted inside him. Recovery was a long, brutal road. The pain, the nightmares, the frustration of learning to walk again. Those things didn't break Mark, but the memories of that fire came close. Strangely, it was Samantha who helped him piece his mind back together. She came every day, sometimes just to check his wounds, sometimes to sit with him in silence when he didn't want to talk. Over time, silence turned to stories. Mark shared bits of his life as a SEAL. Stories of danger and loss, the kinds of things he never thought he'd say out loud. Samantha opened up, too, telling him about her small hometown, the family she missed, why she chose nursing even when it broke her heart. In those quiet hours, something real grew between them. Friendship, trust, a kind of loyalty that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. Then, just as life started to feel normal again, the ground shifted. One ordinary Tuesday, Samantha found out the hospital was laying off nurses, starting with her. She'd dedicated years of her life to helping others, but now, because of budget cuts and some backroom deals, she was out. Her name was on the list. Samantha fought back, rallied her coworkers, started organizing protests and meetings, refusing to just disappear quietly. Mark, when he heard, didn't think twice. He called every old friend he had, military contacts, people who owed him favors. He started digging and found evidence of corruption at the highest levels, contracts, kickbacks, all the things no one wants in the light. Mark knew that if he brought this public, he could lose his career, his reputation, even his safety. But none of that mattered. Loyalty ran deeper than ambition. Samantha had risked everything for him. He was going to do the same. With the help of his network, Mark started leaking information to journalists, putting together the puzzle pieces, building a case so solid no one could ignore it. When the story broke, it hit the city like another explosion. Headlines screaming, protests swelling outside the hospital, TV cameras in the faces of the very people who tried to make it all go away. The board caved, first denying, then deflecting, finally surrendering. The cuts were revoked, corrupt officials suspended or fired, and the hospital's future saved. The day it was all decided, the boardroom was as cold and silent as a tomb. Mark stood there, no medals, no fanfare, just a man doing what needed to be done. Samantha watched from the back, relief and gratitude and something else, something like pride, shining in her eyes. When she thanked him, Mark shook his head, rough voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life. This was nothing." Samantha smiled, knowing better. Both of them understood. It was never about evening a score. It was about choosing not to let each other fall. It didn't end with a fairy tale, or worth more than stripes on your sleeve. Samantha went back to her life, quiet, relentless, caring for the sick and broken, never chasing glory. Yet everything was changed. Their bond, forged in fire and tested in the cold machinery of the system, had become unbreakable. If there's a lesson in all this, maybe it's that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they refuse to walk away from someone else's fight, when they choose loyalty over comfort, action over silence. And maybe, just maybe, the best things we ever do aren't about paying someone back, but about making sure no one stands alone in the fire. So if you're still listening, ask yourself, when the flames come for you, or for someone you care about, will you turn away, or will you risk everything to pull them back to the light? If this story moved you, don't forget to share your thoughts below. Do you think loyalty and sacrifice can really change fate, or does everything just fade back to normal? Let's hear your voice, because the story, in the end, belongs to all of us.